Hi guys, good. Some technical difficulties always.
Yeah.
So I see we have everybody on. So basically it's our entire internal team, but we also have two special guests. We have Ben and Dale, Ben Santiago and Dale Warner in the call in this webinar. So let me share my screen for a bit to give you a bit of context about this meeting that we are doing today. Share screen. Yeah, so basically this is a webinar that we'll be doing weekly, and this is the first iteration, and we said that we are going to start with the internal team and a few special guests today. But we'll do this every week, and its idea is to be like a community and team webinar where we get together to maybe showcase one or two features or big problems that we solve, and then have this exchange of ideas and also address the community questions. So right now, like I said, it's the first iteration, so it's mostly internal as an experiment. It will be another experiment next week, but after that, we'll start promoting it and doing it publicly, so anyone can join. And then I structured this like I told you, we'll touch one or two major topics, and I have two very interesting ones for today. And then let's have a conversation about this. The third part will be about going on the community topics. Some come from support, maybe some are raised here in the webinar. And then we are thinking of having a fourth part, that's the hidden gem. Maybe we don't announce it, and maybe we do it at the end for people that manage to last for that long, of course. And say to have like a product roadmap discussion, like the vision, what we'd like to see, what we'd like to happen. Of course, this is just a proposal, it's the first iteration, we'll learn as we go. So yeah, we are in this point. So this will be, like I told you, a weekly webinar. We'll get better, we'll engage with the community, and we'll have the entire team here with minor exceptions. Okay, so let's go over the topics today. I have two big topics. One is InfoBox. Nobody believes that it works. Nobody believes that it has any value. It was an ambitious project from a few years ago. And I'm here today to prove that it works and that it does have that value. Just to give you a brief overview about it, because I think not everyone knows about this product. It's about creating those tooltips. You know, when you go to a site, click here to get started, click next to go there, stuff like that. And there's actually software out there that only does this. You can install it on your website and then have those tooltips guiding users through an onboarding experience, for example. The other part will be about workflows, and that I think will be a bigger and interesting discussion. So I will start with this info box to show you that it works. Yeah. So I have here a plant and app instance. It's nothing interesting here, just a few blank pages. But I will go to the configuration screen, and there, sorry, there we have InfoBox, which we integrated in Plant and App, because I believe it will solve a big problem. Whenever you have a new system that you need to deploy in an organization, people have to start learn how to use it. And the thing is, if you deploy all at once and you make a sudden transition, then maybe you can get everybody in the same room and do it. But if the system is adopted incrementally and new employees come in, members of the team, then a more automated mechanism is needed.
Bogdan, just a second again. The last two pages were again choppy, very choppy.
Yep. I will try to also stop my video.
Yes, I'm sure it's something about resources. Can you just go through the last phrase? I think that was pretty choppy and people didn't get it.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes, yes.
I also stopped the video. Sorry about that. Yeah. So to reiterate the last thing I said, so we have this product called InfoBox. It's been around for at least 5-6 years. It didn't get the success that we are hoping to, but it does solve a big problem with onboarding people into using new software. And I'm here to prove that it works. In Plantain App, we brought it under the training section. And I mean, one of its big defects is that the UX never matured. So it's a bit difficult to understand where to get started. So we start by creating a new guide, give it a name, getting started. And for now, that's all I do, because after that, there's an interactive mode button here. And I will go into this mode, which basically you see it opens side by side the website with the admin part. So the first thing that we have to do is to add a trigger. When does this guide starts? No? And we add a trigger here on the left, and it's various options to define the trigger. The simplest one is that it should start whenever the user lands on a page, on page load. We pick a page from a dropdown where we use this crosshair to say, yeah, pull the current page. So now we told this workflow, this guide, that it should start on the page. There is no step yet, so I create the first step and I give it a name. Click here to start. And this I can attach to a DOM element. Where do I want the tooltip to appear? So let's say we put it on the logo here. Yeah. So now I also have a live preview of the tooltip, how it looks like. You know? So you can see that it's real time. I can see in real time what will appear inside the pop-up. And then it's about adding buttons. You know, this is the first step, but after that, we want a button maybe to go to the next step. No? So let's call this next. And then next step should be what? And here you can see that we have all the actions that we have in our modules. They are also in here. Right? So I could also send an email as part of this workflow, or do even an action like click here to create a new customer. You click there and you run a SQL to create a test customer, for example. And there are some special actions under guide menu that control advancing the guide, or going back, or finishing the guide, or go at a future step. So skip a few steps in the guide. So let's just say we want to go to the next step. So this is the only action that I'm going to add. Right? So I'm saving. Save. Okay. So now I can add a second step, right? And the second step can be on a different page. It doesn't have to be on the same page. So let's say that we go, I had a test page here in somewhere, test page. So you can see the page reloads. So on the right hand, I will see the test page. And here I can attach it to a different DOM element. Let's put it on the search, for example. So you can see I can also point and click to pick the element. Of course, there's a lot of HTML elements in there, so you have to figure the right one. And there's also some padding issue there. So now I attached the tooltip to the search button, and maybe I say here, click here to search. Right? And again, I could add buttons, and maybe let's add a button that just finishes the guide. Okay, so now I save, and now I have a simple guide with 2 steps, right? I can close interactive mode. It will take me back to the training page. But now when I go back to the site on the home page, you see the info box, the tooltip pops up, right? So I have the button, the text, the body, and then if I click this next button, because the second step is on a different page, it will also do a redirect. So now you see it goes to the test page, and now I have the second step here on the right. Right? So I can click finish and it finishes the guide. If I go back to the home page, it starts over again. It starts all over again. And these are settings that I can control. I can tell it what happens here. Okay, so I can tell it under settings. Come on, edit. I can tell it how to enforce it. For example, if people abandon a guide, you can force it. So if I had arrived to the home page, because I was at the second step, it would automatically redirect me to the second step. No? Or if people just abandon, just mark it as finished. And yeah, various conditions. I'm not sure that I even know most of them, what they do. Oh, this is the count actually. If I wanted the workflow to only run once per user, I will put this to 1. 0 means infinite. So now if I understood that setting right, if I refresh here, I should no longer see that tooltip, but I see it here. So maybe I have to run it again to count as 1. I don't know. But this proves the point. It works. It does what it claims to do. It still needs a lot of polishing on the UX UI front, especially in the admin part, and here in the user part, maybe some UI adjustments. But it's very powerful and saves a lot of time with onboarding people in new systems. So let's see if we have any questions. I think we can also, Gav, we can also give people the ability to speak if they raise hands, I think, right?
Yes, you are a host now, and you can, only you as a host can manually grant permissions to anyone to even use their microphone.
Okay, I'm not sure how I do that, but we'll learn.
If you go to the participants section, you just go to everyone's name, and you should have some options on hover.
Yeah, so maybe if somebody wants to talk, should raise a hand, and then I will do the switch. So let's hear it from the biggest hater of InfoBox.
We also have a question in the Q&A in the meantime, just so you know.
Yeah. So yeah, Ben asks if this is, I show it in Plant&App, but it's a module. So if you have the collection, it's already available to you. You can download and install it. It's called InfoBox, the module. Yeah, it never got too popular because I think we never did the iteration to mature it and properly promote it. But the power is there. Okay, so we have participants, we have question and answer, and I think we also have chat somewhere. Yeah. Okay, so Reza, do you want to say something? I remember you explicitly asking proof that it works. Yeah, I can allow to talk, yeah.
I guess I'm a believer now. It was figuring out how to get the button on that I was struggling with and triggering it. So I think the key for me now is the mode you switched it to, the side-by-side. Makes a huge difference.
Cool. So now that everybody saw that it works, maybe we try to do something with it. Because if we start using it, we see what's missing, what's not well, and then we can have those iterations and make it a smoother experience. If there are any videos on InfoBox, I don't remember. So we did this development, I think it was 6 years ago, something like that. And that's when we released it. We did maybe a few small things since then, but nothing major. So I think there should be at least one video. But yeah, you have to look far ahead into the past, far back into the
I have one question, Bogdan. Does it have the ability or awareness, like once a user has seen the getting started guide, like to not trigger after it's been viewed, or a like don't show me this again option?
Yeah. So I think is that one number that I put there. So let me try again. If I finish the guide now and go back to the home page, yeah, it doesn't fire again.
Awesome.
So it's that last setting that I put in here where I said under triggers, I said that it should fire only once per user.
And is that like a per session, or if you logged out and logged back in, it remembers, like it has its data store?
I don't think it's per session, but I'm not sure. I personally also didn't work with this module for years.
Okay. Last question then, since you asked. So let's say that a lot of times users don't want to see that stuff in the beginning. They just dismiss things, right? And then they go and start using and they say, hey, where'd that guide go? Could you like put a button like on the page to an action form and then re-trigger the guide?
Yeah, so there's two ways you can do this. You also have conditional triggers. So you could put a token expression, so then you could control this from somewhere else, from a database. If you turn a flag on, this token becomes true, and then the users see the guide. So you can make it based on tokens, but there's also a module. So let's add it to the page. It also comes with a module that shows you the menu with all the guides that you have, and you can manually start one or another. So let's see where is this module. It's called InfoBox guide menu. Yeah, so it appears here at the bottom. Oh, what happens? Oh, I have to drag it. Doesn't matter where I drag it, it will go there. Okay, so I guess I see I don't see any entries in the menu. I guess that it's taking that into account, the trigger count. Let me try to get that out of the way, get it back to 0. Save, refresh. Oh, no, okay. It should have been here. So here you would have a menu, and then what would you like to do? You could have maybe create a new customer, or find the active support tickets or stuff like that, and that could start a guide. I'm not sure why it's, I think I have to configure it. Let me check that. Okay, find the module. This is the module. Okay, yeah, so I have to manually add them to the list of guide menu. Save changes. Yeah, so now they would appear in the list.
So then just to close this out, if you set that trigger count back to 1.
Yeah, let's try that. Oh. Did I stop screen sharing?
Yeah.
Accidentally, yeah. Okay, let's set it back to 1. Save. I think I have to do it again because that resets everything. Finish. So now I go back to the home page. Yeah. So now let's click on the getting started, and it appeared, you see?
Very cool.
Yeah.
I believe.
Good. I like to turn people into believers. Okay, so yeah, that's InfoBox. If there's nothing else to add on this point right now, I will move to the second part, which is about workflows. So just to give you a big overview of workflows, we've been doing them for a while. I think it's since last release that they are really stable. So since maybe 3 weeks ago that they are really stable and useful. We started using it more and more, and it feels like the next level, the right way to build apps. And I put here just a number of arguments that I see why you should use workflow instead of doing long action lists. And I will show this by examples, not just talk about them. But basically, these are the arguments. They separate the UI logic from the business logic very well. Because workflows, they are not attached to any form, any grid, any API, unless you use the execute workflow action in one of them. And then the UI logic actions like open pop-up, close pop-up, display response, that can stay separate, right? And I will show you, I will show you a API endpoint that we rewritten, me and Andre did most of the work. Rewritten them to use workflow instead of action list, and you'll see how clean it is and how maintainable it is. So actually, I will go in parallel because I think that would make more sense. So here I have a different system, and maybe for people that didn't see it yet, because this system is quite new. So this system is where we managing the DevOps building of Z packages that are the modules, but also the plant and app package that we install on premise. So we have this, the releases, the plant and app releases. We are now doing the 1.6, it's under development, the rest are released. And then each of these has a list of dependencies. So let's look at the dependencies, which are actually the DNS shard modules that are included in that release, right? So we know that all these builds with these versions, they work well together because they went through QA to UAT. And that's when, when you install plant and app on premise, that's the exact versions that it will automatically download and install. Of course, you could install newer version of each module if you want it, but you would lose stability in this process because we haven't tested that one with the combination of this list of versions. Yeah, these are also separately available here as builds. So here we see all the builds as they coming in through GitHub. They build automatically and they would appear in this list. And we have the download link here, but we also have the notes, the pull request notes. And if it's a failed build, we also, let me see if I can find a failed build. Yeah, this is one failed. I can view the error and it goes to our old system that we are replacing. And here, here you can see the log, the error, that what happened. Yeah, so all of this is automated, but with this new system, our goal was to make it more streamlined, make it less flexible because we are doing things in a certain way over and over again, and there's no point to leave flexibility where we don't need it. It just creates complexity and error prone. It's error prone. So let me show you how this was built with the workflows behind the scenes. So I will, this is again the plant and app with all its features. And what I will look at is an API. That's how we started, an API that computes the next version, right? So for a module, when there's a pull request coming from GitHub, this API is responsible of determining what is the next version for that module should be, depending on which branch it is. Basically, if it's on a previous release, then it's published as a hotfix, but if it's on the current release, it's incremented with that version number. So as you can see, you've probably seen this over and over again, like run a batch of query, put a bunch of conditions, if not exist, create some tokens, use those tokens in other conditions, I mean, the usual stuff. But to understand this process, what you have to do is go through every action, understand the SQL, understand the conditions. You don't understand the flow very well from here. So let me show you at what we arrived when we rewritten this with a workflow. So here we have a get next version workflow. And if I edit this, you see, it's the same thing, but displayed in a different manner, So I can see the process starts here, and here it splits. If branches develop, it goes here, check branch, which this is a SQL query, that just brings a token, right? But I don't have to go into it. I just know that if it's on this branch, it checks the version. Otherwise, it just creates a variable, and then it merges back. And this is equivalent to what was happening here in the first action, If it not exists, creates this token, and after that, that token was used in next actions. But since I put it this way, it's much more clear what are the conditions and where the process splits. And then it continues. It does another split based on either the branch exists or not. If the branch doesn't exist, here it returns a JSON object that just says do not build, because this is not one of the branches that creates builds automatically. Maybe it's a feature branch, it's a bug branch, it's a private branch. It's definitely not one of the develop or release branches. Yeah, so this one, you can see this split goes all over to the end of the process. So it skips everything, right? But if the branch exists, then we have two branches. One, where we determine if it's on develop, we determine that it's a hotfix. So on develop, which contains the latest published release, we know that only hotfixes are allowed there. So then it verifies if a hotfix already exists, it increments the version of the hotfix. If not, it increments the version of the build that was released. So that's what this split here does. And then there's another split. Now we have three cases. If it's a hotfix and it's on develop, it gets the actual version from there. If it's not a hotfix but it's on develop, does something else. It means that a hotfix was not created yet, so it's the first hotfix probably. And then if the branch is not developed, this is actually on the development branch, on the release branch, so it's incrementing from there. Yeah. So this one, it's just a SQL that gets back it's a load entities from SQL action. Yeah. So it just creates a entity called getInfo. Right. Next, it increments the version, which is actually, this is a execute for each. So here we still have this problem where you have an action list, it's difficult to follow. So in a future iteration, we'll also get this out. So you have this also in a flowchart kind of way, not in this kind of flat list kind of way. And then creates the JSON object. And here the two branches merge, the one where it did not exist and this one that did all the logic, and the process ends, right? So now going back to my points, you can see that this is only the business logic. So at this point, I don't know where this workflow is used. And I don't think I care to know. Maybe Andre used it in an API endpoint, maybe used it in a form. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I care. If I want to see what the business logic behind that, I just go there. And all the business logic is in the same place, because let me go back here, not here. So if I go back, that was only one workflow from all the workflows that we have in the system. So you see the entire business logic is here. I don't care where it's tied to the UI. No, I know that, for example, this is the publish process. What happens when a plant and app release is published, right? So if I wanted to see what happens, and I know that we haven't evolved that yet, it just marks something in the database, but it's here. And if I wanted to add a new step, like I want to also send an email, I come here, I add the send email action, and I know that all the places that use this publish workflow, they will call this workflow, so they will all send an email. I don't have to go chase it around in every single module, right? Yeah, so it's clear to see the entire business logic here, everything that happens that is not tied to the UI. And then they are very readable. You know, I don't have to have technical knowledge. I don't have to know SQL to just come here to the, and maybe now let's look at a different one. I think Andre just did this one today. No? So this one is getting the dependency. So when you install the app builder module on premise, this one, the app builder calls an API, which has this workflow behind it, that returns all the modules that need to be downloaded and installed. Yeah, so looking at this, I can see the business logic without even going into the action. I can see that if there is, if the version is blank, it will probably give me the last build. Select the latest, exactly. And if there is a version, it probably does it pulls it from the database. And then this one verifies probably that some builds exist. I think this one. So whenever there's an if or a condition in here, that's when I think we should split this process more. So I don't think we should put ifs in SQL anymore. We should make a SQL that returns the result of the if and use that if on splits. And then put the query in additional SQL actions on each branch. Okay. And also when you see this again can go as a bifurcation. You know, as a split process where you have different branches based on this parameter. No. Because then you see like this one, I didn't understand what to do. I had to open it up and see that it has 3 ifs inside. But if it was expanded here with the branches, I would have understood the flow and the logic, the high level logic of the process. Yeah, so then it merges, it splits the process again. And then what I read here, if the build does not exist, it just writes an error response message, could not be found. But if the build exists, it gets its extension and probably serializes them to JSON. No? So I was able to read this process quite easily, besides this action here that should be expanded further. So I was able to read this without understanding SQL, without even looking at these actions. I imagine that they produce some JSON, I don't care. But I understand the entire process here. Yeah, so the flow is obvious and they can be tested more easily because I haven't showed this part yet. But now let me go back. I have the, let's test the get next version here. So I can test it from this button. Each workflow has input and output parameters. So if I send here a product code, action form, and a branch name, develop, I can test that when I run this process, it returns a JSON. This is the next version for action form on the develop branch. It's a hotfix to 5.5, so 18 is the next. Whereas it was on a release branch, let's call it 1.6, which is the current development branch actually. You know, it's 5.6. So it's this one is incremented, and this one increments for each action form build. This is the app builder version, so to speak, and this increments for each action form on the new release. Yeah. So you can see how I can easily test it from here without having to go and fill a form somewhere on a page or call an API, you know, which is a few extra steps, extra validation, you know, extra requirements, maybe some UI logic that I have to get past. Yeah, so I can test it much more easily here. And then the very nice part about it is that you can easily do some automated testing as they are today, because you can create an API endpoint that calls this workflow, And with that API endpoint, you can include it in an automated tested suite, call that API with various parameters and check the output, right? So then you could build APIs just for testing a workflow. So that workflow is encapsulated, and you know that that workflow, it may be used in 10 different action forms, but they will all call the same workflow with some parameters. So for those of you that did not work yet with the workflows, the parameters are defined on these two tabs. On the input is the input parameters, like this one accepts a product code and the name of a branch. And they produce an output. In this case, we just export the JSON as string. Okay, so yeah. And finally, imagine that you come back to this 3 months later, right? So you come back to that workflow 3 months later, and you are looking at this one. And you have to go through each action to remember what the hell is in there, what's the logic, and so on, right? Whereas if you came back to this 3 months later, right, it would be much more easier to remember the flow, the business logic, and where you need to put the new action. Because if you come back to it, you probably need to extend it with an action or change the business logic or do something. Yeah. So that's what I started this by saying, that workflows now are in a very good situation to be used. They are very stable and they have the basic sets of features, but there's so much that we want to do in future iterations. So just here I just collected a list of ideas that we discussed over time. So I think this will be the first one that we do, to expose workflow as tokens, right? So then I could invoke a workflow like the one that we had, get next version, like this. And then I could use it anywhere. I could use it inside an action form field, right? As a condition, I could use it in a HTML module. I could use it everywhere. So whereas now you can have these tokens that are razor-based, that can be more complex, that's as flexible as we get. But with workflows, you can have a token that doesn't have just a razor script. It has 10 actions behind it that help produce that output that the token needs to return. So this will open an immense world of opportunities for us. You saw that you can test the workflows, but the next thing there is to save those tests. So if you test over and over again, you don't have to fill the test every time. You can load them, but also mark that some of them should be run automatically. So for this input, that workflow should return that output every time. So you save those tests. So every time you go and do a modification in the workflow, the system automatically runs all those tests that you saved, and it tells you that one broke, for example. So then you know that the change you did broke a test. You have to figure out why. Maybe it's intended, maybe not. But that gives you a lot of confidence. If you go in there 3 months later, it will give you a lot of more confidence to do those changes that might break things. We have some more work to do on the input and output parameters. Right now they are all optional, but we plan to have the ability to mark them as required or optional, provide some default value. So then they become more predictable, like code functions, like functions in C#, where you have to specify if a parameter is optional or required, and that creates predictability in the workflow. Another thing that we discussed, in PlanTNAP, we generate a lot of form and grids for every entity. But one of the ideas is that if you have an input into a workflow that is an entity, because you can let's add a new parameter, let's call it build, let's say. You can create these input types of basic types, but you can also create it of entity types, right? So when you create it, you say it's a build. And this is actually an entity, a database row, so it has more properties. So I could access the build properties using the column notation like we do in tokens, right? So I can use this inside the process. So with this one, if I pass this into the workflow, to have the ability to automatically put it on the grid for this entity. So then you have a button on that entity that can run this workflow. And for the rest of parameters, just open up a form that I can fill in. But this one, I already know because I clicked on that row, right? So create that kind of automation. Let me back and not save this. Okay, and then other feature is permissions, because since we are going to put them in grid, we need permissions. Who can run this workflow, of course. A run history would be nice to see how many times the interval, who's running the workflows, and from which modules, so to have that kind of audit information about the workflow. And then the next big thing, we discussed this, is to have workflows that don't have to run at once, because all our workflows now, they are one go, most of them, unless you are using maybe a PayPal action, which knows to get the response later. The rest are running instantly. So then our idea was that we should have some workflows that arrive to a state where they wait for a different thing to happen. So they didn't complete finish, maybe they will continue in a few minutes, maybe they will continue in a few days, maybe they will continue next year. They wait for an event to be triggered. And of course, the team brought that up. As you get to have more and more workflows, we need a way of grouping them together. So they belong to various, let's say, classes, like we have in C# or other programming languages, to have a grouping of workflows that are related to a particular area of the product, of the system. And finally, maybe public-private workflow, because some workflows you want to allow calling them from action form or from APIs or other modules, while some might only be internal to be able to be called from other workflows. They shouldn't be exposed as action. So to start creating more workflows that doesn't pollute the modules. So control what gets exposed outside of workflows. So this is just a list I compiled quickly today. I'm sure that there are many other stuff that we discussed and I missed. But it's what I wanted to reflect here is that we have a lot of ideas of how to push this forward. So that's why I feel that we should use it more today, because it works. So then we can start learning and do these iterations. Oh, I talked a lot. So let's see.
There are some questions in the Q&A.
Yep.
Dale's question, are there any videos for this yet? Is at 6:18 p.m.
Yeah, I think it's about the InfoBox.
Yeah.
Yep. Participants. Okay. Yeah, so I mean, if you want to talk, you can just raise your hand. Otherwise, I will go through the Q&A questions. So Radu is asking, when using multiple splits instead of a big SQL query with if statements, won't be multiple SQL connections that get open and closed? It will be a trade-off for performance. I agree it will be a trade-off. Now it depends on the workflow. If it's one of those workflows that needs to be called a lot, very often, then maybe it's worth. Otherwise, it's a trade-off between maintenance and performance. If it's a workflow that gets called maybe, I don't know, once every few minutes, I mean, an extra query that's simple won't be a problem. If it's called 100 times per second, that would be a problem, right? So it's a trade-off. I would go to increase maintenance capability, so for it to be clear and more maintainable, unless there is a big performance in the middle, and then, yeah, maybe we can discuss. Okay, so then, oh, yeah, that's a very good one. Like Radu also asked about caching, like we have in API or my tokens, where you can cache the response. Yeah, I think that's a good idea and should be on this roadmap. Definitely, caching, it's a big thing. And also, Radu asks if it will create API automatically in the future. I think also that, yes, that's a quick one we can do. I don't think that should be a far future, because we generate for all the entities, it makes sense to generate for all workflows. Okay, so let's see. Anybody else wants to discuss workflows? Raise your hand. So maybe, Andre, do you want to talk a bit about your experience? Because I know you did this transition last week and this week, most of it. So you have a fresh opinion about how the transition feels from doing that kind of action list with many conditions towards using workflows.
Sure. Hello, everyone. What can I say? Workflows maybe at first seems a bit, I don't know, hard to work with, but it's not that hard as you can see, or maybe not that hard to understand, because it's simply logic, and it's like when you put some ideas on paper, when you make a plan, and this workflow thing makes you understand even better what you can develop with the actions that you are going to use by just creating first your plan and maybe then adapt and making the performance to grow.
Yeah.
And I also used the new action with execute JavaScript on server side. That is the new action we have, and I just replaced all the run SQL queries that were not using the and calling the database.
Mhm.
And
Where is it, Andre? In which workflow?
for the moment, it's number 11, release version converter JS.
Okay.
And I also didn't delete the SQL one just for a simple comparison.
Okay, so we have that one as well. Cool. So which one is the old one?
If you could go back, number 10.
Number 10.
Yeah, so it does the same thing, but one is using SQL and the other one is JavaScript.
Yeah, yeah. So this is the SQL, just doing some string manipulation to get to the right version. And this other one is JavaScript.
Yes.
Yeah. So just a quick feedback here. You don't have to use the token notation here. This
Okay.
would work as well, right?
Yeah, I think yes.
Yeah,
And
because everything that you have in the context, you see, all the data from current context are already available as variables, you know?
okay.
So you already have this base version as a variable, so you can say like this and not even need this one,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So everything that you have in the context at this point will be local JavaScript variables. And then whatever you return gets saved into this token. And of course you can return objects, you know, like version. So this is an object with a single property. And then this one would, when you use it, you have to do like that version when you use it as a token.
Yeah.
Because this one is the name of the property and this one is the entire object. Yeah. I will not save this one. I will let you do the changes.
Okay.
This was another topic that it's on my list, but I said that I will only pick two because there's so much to talk about. This will probably be in the next webinar, the execute JavaScript on the server side and the Razor as well. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, I agree. It's much cleaner. And the fact that you have local variables, they are typed and you can do proper checking and everything, that's a huge thing.
Yep. And more faster.
Sorry?
And more faster.
Yeah, definitely. It's faster than SQL because it doesn't do a connection to another server. It just runs in the same process. Okay, so Dale, do you also want to talk? Yeah, I give you ability to talk. I know that you started with workflows by yourself last week or 2 weeks ago, and I was impressed that you managed to do a workflow without any formal training.
I did. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I was just real impressed by. It was pretty straightforward to use, and all the benefits that you mentioned there. I didn't put in any automated testing, but you see those benefits, and particularly in the area of testing, to isolate an area of business logic and to be able to provide inputs and outputs and see, okay, this thing works. Now I can consume it very easily from somewhere else, a form or wherever. I think it's a great step forward.
Thanks. What would you think from everything that I showed that's on the roadmap? What do you feel like it will be the next big thing for workflows?
Can you pop that back up again?
Sure.
Yeah, tokens makes a lot of sense to me, and I mean, permissions is it's going to come when you have to do more. Although you could build that in, somebody that was important to could build that into the logic, but I'd probably pick those couple to start with. Also, grouping, because I know, you and I've talked that some of the applications I'm thinking about migrating, there's going to be a lot of business logic. So being able to put them in some kind of organization is going to be important.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Dale, for being here in this webinar and
thanks for the invite.
Yeah, I hope it was educative and helpful. I know, Ben, we talked a lot on the help desk about workflows, and you were resistant to it, so that's why I thought maybe you should be in this webinar to see the entire story. So I'm wondering, what's your thoughts on it so far?
It's very impressive. I kind of love how with the workflow you can, like you explained, easily see what the process is doing, because I know I've built a lot of actions where the list is so ridiculously long that I could get completely lost. I come back 3-4 months later and I'm literally opening up every single action just to figure out what the heck was I doing several months ago when I designed this. And then I've been also using your flow action, which makes things even worse, because now if I have 25 actions, but in there I have a flow action, open that up, I have another 20 actions in there, it gets really cumbersome. So looking at this is amazing, because it does offer you that ability to see that logic up front in a very easy manner, that if you know exactly what it is you want to do to a specific workflow, if you want to add the ability to send an email at a certain point, you don't have to open up all the actions to figure out where am I going to insert this action. You can just go here, see where in that logic you want to put it, and just add it right there. It makes it a lot easier. So, looking at this, I'm really impressed, and looking forward to having the ability to use it soon.
Yep. And here I also see that this process got complicated. So probably the next step that we'll do with Andre is get some of these parts into a separate workflows that this one calls. So this one looks much more simpler. Start creating sub functions instead of creating one big workflow. Yeah. Ben, thanks a lot for accepting my invitation to be here. I really appreciate it, and I think it's the feedback that helps us a lot.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and it's great to see, you know, the stuff that you guys are working on. I mean, I've been using your products for years on end, and you know, like I always tell you, and I tell you know, the guys that I work with you guys, your products are amazing. I use them every single day. So keep up the great work, and that's pretty much it. But I'm looking forward to moving forward.
Yep. Thanks a lot, Ben. Yep. So anybody wants to add anything else about the workflows? Okay, then I think we can conclude this part. If you want, we can discuss more about this product roadmap. But since we are all most of us are from the same team, and we already heard Ben and Dale, I think for this week we should skip the part where we talk about the product roadmap and do it in the next iteration. If you are okay with that, of course. If anybody wants to add anything else. Let me open my Q&A chat, all the windows. Okay. So I think that's it for today. Thank you all, team and guests, for being here. We'll repeat this next week. It will probably be the same format, the internal team plus a few special guests. But the other week, we'll start doing it publicly, trying to get more people from the community here to learn, to collaborate, and to get feedback and to plan ahead the big things that are coming in PlantaNet. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you for the presentation.
Thanks, Bogdan. Good stuff.
Thanks, guys. And we are just in time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, then. Bye. Have a
Bye,
great
guys.
one.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.